Record high temperatures at both the Earth's north and south poles have alarmed scientists who say we are potentially facing a dramatic new phase of climate change. In March, the Arctic saw temperatures hit 30 degrees Celsius above the average. That's the equivalent of around 50 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. While in Antarctica, temperatures reached a whopping 40 degrees Celsius or almost 7 degrees Fahrenheit more than normal. Some scientists have linked warming at the poles to the increase in extreme weather events around the world. What do these figures tell us, and what does that mean to you? I'm pleased to be joined in Beijing by Xiang, Associate Professor at the Institute of Energy of Peking University, and from Chicago, the U.S., Patrick Gehl, President of ChildWise International Corporation and Environmental Advisor to former U.S. President Bill Clinton. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Professor Lee, let me go to you first. So let's be clear that these 30 degrees or 40 degrees I'm citing is not to say that the North or South Pole is reaching summertime. It's just that they are higher than what they should be. It's still very, very cold, but there is a great fluctuation that's abnormal. So what is your understanding of exactly what's going on in both poles?
Well, Lucian, thank you for asking this question. And this is extremely unusual from my perspective. And I just want to point out that this is, in fact, due to the climate change, but also to a large extent, I would say this is, to some extent, a coincidence because at the South Pole, there is a very high temperature anticyclone, and at the North Pole, there's a low pressure anticyclone. They just happen at the same time. So I would say some part of it is due to the climate change issue, and we cannot neglect it. But to a larger extent, this is just something not normally happening on the Earth. And from my perspective, I can see that not the whole region of the North Pole and South Pole are happen with a high temperature. It's only part of that. So I would say this is only something that we need to really take serious consideration at this point, and we want to watch if this happens year after year, and this could be a really severe event.
Professor, Mr. Gehl, what is your take on what we're seeing, and how serious is the situation? Is it a one-time abnormal phenomenon, or is it an indication of something larger, of a longer trend?
No, this is very predictable. It's been building since the 1970s. The temperatures have risen at an alarming rate, and everybody knows about it, but many people didn't do too much about it. In 1980s, the UN formed their first climate change committee to start investigating the information, and it just continues to get worse and worse. The Paris Peace Accord was put together to try to avoid the reaching the tipping point of how we can't recover from this global catastrophe. Of course, it's due to climate change. Of course, it's predictable. Of course, it's going to get worse.
Professor Lee, because what you were saying actually is we need to watch more, right? We need to find out more before we make any absolute conclusion. What are the scientific evidences you can highlight here for our average audience so that they can understand, which supports your argument that we still need more evidence that this is not completely due to climate change? Maybe this is just a one-off phenomenon.
Right. So basically what I observed like 10 days ago, the temperature, as you mentioned, would increase like 30 degrees at the South Pole and maybe 40 degrees or even 50 degrees at the North Pole. But after like 5 days or so, the temperature just recovered to its normal level. So I would say, and after I have discussed with several scientists and in the Earth science, and I just basically discover this is something that happens once in a time, but it's not like a normal event.
How can you be sure? Because what can possibly explain that? I mean, 40 or 30 degrees Celsius is quite a difference.
Exactly. It is quite different. And that's basically because of the anticyclone at the South Pole and the low temperature cyclone at the North Pole. I mean, this is not abnormal, and they're not going to happen at the same time for the most of the time. But this time they just happen, and I would say that's a coincidence. But as mentioned by the other experts here, the climate change issue always plays an important role in that, and we should not neglect that.
Gehl, your reaction, what do you think? I mean, of course, climate change has to be fought. We have to do more. We have to keep the temperature at a low level, and yet do we have to also take into scientific evidence into consideration and not overreact or thinking that the world the sky is falling on our head tomorrow?
The sky is falling on our head. The scientific evidence is very conclusive that we are entering a time of climate change that has been demonstrated not only by these events. These may be rare events because of the cyclonic features that are happening there, but the weather patterns are disrupted because of the climate change. So not only can you watch the temperature rise on each of these poles over the last 30, 40 years, but that also all the terrible weather that we've had, the floods, the tornadoes, the tsunamis that occur are coming because of the climate change, and we need to do something immediately. If we sit and watch, we won't have much
Mr. Gehl, do you have a practical suggestion that people must heed?
Yes, we need to reduce our carbon emission, period. That's what the Paris Peace Accord is about. That is what has been said from the Rio arrangement all the way back from the Clinton-Gore administration. That we need to address these issues because they are destroying the world. We see the rising sea levels that have lost some island nations.
Do you think the Paris Agreement and the ensuing action has been effective?
It hasn't been enough. People haven't met their goals.
Okay.
People aren't going to meet their goals.
All right, Professor Lee.
That's the problem.
Professor Lee, what are your take?
I think I would agree with Gehl. The Paris Climate Accord is taking action, but I mean, people right now or countries right now are more focused on the target and its ambitious plans, but not too much on the action perspective. So I would say the Paris Climate Accord is super important in the climate change issue, but right now we are just off track.
What must be done? What must be done? That is the big question. What is a small thing, a small step that can be taken on an individual basis? Because I don't know how much influence we have on policymakers, but at least for the people who are watching this, Gehl.
Well, I think that, again, China is the largest emitter in the world, but then at the same time, they are half of the carbon footprint of the United States. So we have these different contradictory factors going on. China needs to try to support their energy demand for the industrialization, but I think they need to take a serious look at that and try to pull back on the high energy need companies and really ration what's going on to decrease the amount of carbon that's being emitted. China has built more coal burning plants last year than the rest of the world combined.
Okay.
China will
all right,
build...
all right. 10 seconds, 10 seconds and left. Okay. Let me give Professor Lee. Is it true? What is your reaction?
I would say that China emits a large proportion of CO2 into the atmosphere than most of the countries. But China, on the other hand, is also taking serious action on the clean energy. China is already like the largest emitter, largest manufacturer of wind power and solar PV manufacturer, and also battery. So I would say this is more
I
like
have
a
to leave it there.
Issue.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big topic. We wanted to talk about the polls. I didn't know how it ended up on a bit about China, but it seems that that's where we went. Anyway, thank you so much. Gehl, as always, and Professor Xiang joining us from Peking University. And that's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.